Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by here today. For those of you who have never seen my face before and you're just stopping by here for the first time, my name is Chioma. Please make yourself comfortable and let's talk about how we sweep things under the carpet that we should not be sweeping under the carpet, okay? Yeah. So it is one of those kind of topics. The things that we are so fond of ignoring, even though these things are important. I would even say that this is the bedrock of our lives. I'm talking about health and healthcare. Health is the truest wealth, in my opinion, as far as I'm concerned, right? And that is what I want to talk about in this video. For those of you who are new here, I enjoy exploring different topics from the immigrant perspective because I live in Australia now, having relocated from Nigeria. And as you would know, if you have made this kind of move in your own life, if you have opted from your home country and moved to another country, you would know that life tends to take on a different shape, a different hue, a different nature when you're living away from home, right? Which is why I enjoy coming on here on this channel and just talking about things from the perspective of an immigrant living in Australia. In this video, I want to talk about healthcare. What I am going to do first of all is just to give an overview of how the healthcare system here in Australia is structured, just so you have a basic understanding of how it works. But it is not the meat of the discussion. The meat of the discussion is what will be coming after, which is where I want to explore some of the ways in which, since coming to Australia, my awareness of my health has improved. Okay, some of the ways in which I have become more proactive in looking after myself health-wise since coming to Australia and why that is the case. Another reason I am making this video is because when you go around asking people why they have relocated to another country, of course, you're going to get different answers. And for some people, it would be for economic reasons. It might be for career opportunities and career progression reasons. Some people would say they made that move to give their children a better future. For some other people, it's just about exploring the world. Okay, they've become tired of living all their lives in one particular spot. And so on to the next big thing, onto the next big adventure. So many reasons why people migrate. But if I pare back a little bit to talk about the Nigerian perspective, of course, when I say the Nigerian perspective, I am speaking generally because there is no way I would know the mind of every single Nigerian who has migrated. But generally speaking, in this day and age, the reasons would be just wanting a better life, wanting better outcomes on a lot of different things. This is not the video where I want to go into those reasons. I actually have another video where I explored the topic of loyalty to your home country and whether you're betraying your home country when you leave for a better life. If you would like to see that video, which was a video I made with a friend, I will leave a link in the description. However, going back to what I was saying, if you ask a typical Nigerian, right, some of them might also mention that they want to be in a country where the healthcare system actually works. However, I don't see a lot of people going as far as researching how different the healthcare system in their host country will be. I don't see a lot of people doing any research around affordability, around accessibility, and also the quality of healthcare, because there is just this assumption that moving to another country, especially a country in the West, means that the healthcare system is good. And this is the case for most Western countries, right? The healthcare system is quite robust, it is complex, it is good, it is great. However, when it comes down to affordability, accessibility, and even quality, the story changes. I have come to realize, for instance, that the healthcare system here in Australia is structured quite differently from the healthcare system in the US. I have seen a lot of things online to suggest that healthcare might not be quite as accessible in the US. People have to have private health insurance to be able to access certain services, and that when you don't have private insurance, then it becomes really expensive. And that's not really the case here in Australia. Of course, I am not saying that Australia's system is perfect or that there is no room for improvement. I am sure that if you also asked different Australians here, some of them would give you reasons as to why they don't think the Australian healthcare system is the best. But I can speak for myself, okay, and this is entirely my experience and my observation. I think the healthcare system here in Australia is great. So how does it actually work here in Australia? First of all, the healthcare system is funded mostly by the government, especially if we're talking about the public healthcare system, which is the hospitals. It is entirely funded by both the federal and the state governments. But before we even get to the hospital level, okay, there is a robust primary healthcare system. So this is the front line of the healthcare system here in Australia. At the primary level is where you would find your local GP clinics. You would also find nurses, other allied health professionals. It might be physiotherapists, psychologists, other mental health professionals. And then you also have dentists, optometrists. So it's an extensive network of primary healthcare providers at that level. And most people would find that they are entirely able to manage their health concerns at that level without ever going into the hospital system. And in my observation, having that very primary level, which is quite extensive, is what makes the healthcare system here accessible, especially in the major cities, which is where most Australians live. It is hardly the case that you can walk up to 3 kilometers within the radius of where you live and not find at least one GP clinic. You can see even certain specialists at that primary level. Some clinics have gynecologists, psychologists, such that you don't need to be going any further to meet your medical or healthcare needs. But you might be referred to the hospital if it's not a very common specialty that you would find in a local clinic, then you get referred to the hospital. The hospital also exists for things like emergencies, so that is where the emergency departments are located all across the country, and there are so many different health districts, and every major health district would have a hospital in that district. So you go into the hospital for emergencies, or it could be for admitted services. So if there's going to be a need for a longer stay in the hospital for several days, then you go into the hospital for that, and you might be getting a referral from your local GP to go into the hospital for that. It could also be for other non-admitted services like elective surgeries, and as I mentioned previously, specialist visits of certain kinds. And then in terms of affordability, some of you would have already known that there is something called Medicare here in Australia, which is the government's insurance scheme covering everybody who is a permanent resident or a citizen of Australia, and also some people on certain classes of temporary visas, okay? I think they might be able to access some Medicare services, but I might be wrong in relation to temporary visa holders. However, if you are in Australia on a visa that doesn't give you access to Medicare, then you are required to maintain some kind of private health insurance in the time that you're going to be in Australia. For those who are permanent residents and citizens, then Medicare covers the cost for most people of receiving medical care. If you were going in to see your local GP in your area, they could be a bulk billed GP. So bulk billing here just speaks to the arrangement of having Medicare cover the entire cost of your medical visits. However, if your GP is not bulk billed, then they might charge you a gap fee. So what it means is that some of the cost of your medical consultations or your medical visit will come out of your pockets, but the rest of it is covered by the government under the subsidized arrangement. Okay, so that is how it works. I think it's also important to mention that the reason the Australian healthcare system is seen as one of the best in the world is because the government spends a lot of money maintaining that system. So they spend about $176 billion every year maintaining and funding the healthcare system. And that amount accounts for about 17% or thereabouts, from what I read online, of government expenditure. As I mentioned in the beginning, my personal opinion is that the healthcare system here is great. And some of the things which make it great, I think I have already spoken about them: accessibility, affordability, and also the quality of the healthcare that you receive. And, you know, the fact that it is a multi-layered system or a tiered system where we're not all heading into the hospital for every medical concern we have, but we have to access early intervention at the primary primary level and even ongoing management at the primary level, I think that is what makes it so accessible. Well, I'm not talking about like remote areas in Australia, but in major cities, I don't think it is possible to go that far before finding a GP clinic. Another thing is paramedical services. So paramedical services are quick and responsive. One thing to note though is that Medicare does not really cover ambulance services. It is usually recommended that you have private health insurance to cover any other thing that Medicare does not cover, like ambulance services. However, I am not saying that if you had an emergency at home that the ambulance will not be coming to get you just because you don't have private health insurance. Of course, if there's an emergency, call the ambulance and then you can structure some kind of payment plan to cover the ambulance service after the emergency. But what I am seeing here is that they are quite quick and responsive. There is also an after hours service. So if you become unwell, but it's not really an emergency, which would require you to go into the hospital, but then the GP clinics in your local area are all closed because it is after hours, or it is the weekends, or it is a public holiday, there is an after-hours service Australia-wide, and you can access the service by calling 136. So this is where an after-hours doctor comes to your home to see you and manage your condition until you can see your GP whenever your GP's office opens again. So I love that. I didn't even know about this service until recently when I had to use it for one of my daughters who became unwell at home. I think it was on a Saturday evening. So, as I said, it's a system that I appreciate. Coming from where I come from, I certainly appreciate having something this affordable, this accessible, but also of high quality. But prevention is better than the best medical service. Prevention is better than the best medical care. It is best that you don't even get to the point where you require medical attention than to wait until things have become too bad before you try to manage it. Which is why I said in the beginning that this video is about something that we tend to sweep under the carpet until we can no longer afford to do so. Some of the ways in which I have become more conscious of my health, more proactive with my health since coming to Australia is what I want to talk about in the next segment of this video. But just a quick reminder here to give this video a like if you haven't already done so. Maybe you want to subscribe at this point. A special welcome to you again if you choose to join the family. Anyways, let's continue. The first thing that impressed on me after we got here that made me think about being more serious with looking after myself was the realization that it's just us here. It's just myself, my husband, and our 2 girls. We don't have any other extended family here. It's not going to be possible for anyone to be running to our aid from the extended family if something happened to us. I'm talking about something health related. Of course, if we told the family, they would offer up prayers for us. They would do all these other things that can provide some emotional support. But in terms of having that physical presence of someone coming to help you in an emergency, we don't have anybody here. It is just us. As I have mentioned in previous videos, I have battled with a few medical conditions, a few medical issues. I wouldn't really call them conditions, but medical issues in the past. And it was after dealing with some of those things, which could have been prevented, that I began to really think about the precarious nature of our being here alone and not having that kind of support. So if you are an immigrant, you're someone who has relocated somewhere else where you're far away from the rest of your family, you should absolutely be taking your health seriously. There are some people who have migrated alone. They are not even like us. They're not even like me, okay, with a husband and kids. There are people who have relocated as singles and they are in that new country by themselves. Of course, it is hoped that you make friends, and I am talking about meaningful friendships, people who would be there with you through thick and thin. But there is also something to be said about not having family members present. So I have become more proactive with my health. That's just what I am saying. The second thing is that the culture kind of just rubs off on you. And I am talking about the culture of being health conscious. Here in Australia, I have seen that people tend to take their health a bit more seriously. So I'm talking about all the preventative things that people do, like working out, being active, and eating healthy meals. When you go out to eat in restaurants, there is always like a menu for different kinds of salads, different things that look very healthy to eat. You see people even walking about in active wear throughout the day. They are taking their pets out on a walk. They are walking themselves or running or jogging throughout the day, right? If you go to the gyms, they are quite busy, and there are lots of gyms. Just as I spoke about GP clinics scattered all over the place, I have also found the same to be the case for gyms scattered all over the place. So it's only a matter of time before it begins to rub off on you, before you begin to think, okay, hang on, maybe I should be doing something to keep myself more healthy, right? The third thing I want to talk about is the food. The food, I'm talking about fresh food here. And this one is pretty shocking, my people. Let me share a shocking observation after we came here to Australia. I observed that fresh food appears fresh, but it's not organic. Organic in the sense of how it is grown, how it is preserved before it hits the shelves in the supermarkets. It came as a surprise to me when, for instance, I would buy tomatoes and put them and just leave them out. Not leave them in the fridge or anything, just leave them out on the counter. 1 week later, they are still looking fresh. 2 weeks later, still looking fresh. This is not happening in winter when the weather is a lot cooler and of course things remain fresher for longer. I'm talking about in warmer weather, and you're expecting that fresh food left out for that long would begin to rot. But that's not the case. It's not rotting. And even when it starts rotting, it doesn't rot in the way that fresh food back home would rot, which is that it develops this very putrid smell. It decomposes before your very eyes and then attracts all these fruit flies. No, it doesn't decompose in that manner. Rather, it begins to spot, like black spots that just grow bigger and bigger. And then the fresh food might begin to shrink. Instead of rotting, it begins to shrink. And I see this happening with things like mandarins and oranges and even apples. The skin of it shrinks. When I observed and noticed this, that was when I became really shocked about the kind of things we were putting in our bodies, like the amount of pesticides and chemicals that we are ingesting, genetically modified food, fruits that have no seeds. And this observation goes hand in hand with some of the things that I read online about how the world is progressively becoming sicker and sicker. More and more people are developing chronic illness, autoimmune diseases all across the world. And it is ironic because it's also happening at the same time that it appears like people are living longer lives, longer but medicated lives. So it's not so much about quality, it is quantity. People are living longer lives where they are hooked up on medication for all sorts of conditions. Type 2 diabetes is through the roof, and it is happening in younger years. Those diseases that we used to call old age diseases. It's only when you grow up to a certain age that you can expect to start falling sick with certain conditions. No, those old age diseases have become young age diseases. And so I think about all of that, about the kind of foods we eat and also how we prepare the foods we eat, the kind of lifestyle that we have these days, a sedentary lifestyle. Most of our jobs are done sitting in front of a computer for long lengths of time. People are not getting up and moving, and as much as they should, given the kind of life that we are living when we are not moving, okay? We're just sitting or lying around watching Netflix all day. So when I observed this about the fresh food, that was when I also started thinking more proactively about looking after my health. Okay, moving on to the next one. It's about the increased trust in the medical system and how that has also improved my health consciousness. So what do I mean by this? You know how back home, right? First of all, people self-medicate a lot back home, and I do not blame them because they don't have trust in the system. They don't really trust that the system will tell them exactly what is wrong with them. I've had this conversation several times with my family back home. It's like when you're unwell, it's either malaria or it is typhoid. Those are the two most popular diagnoses back home. And so people just expect that that is what they're going to be told when they go to the hospital, when they do a test. It's going to come back to say that they have malaria. So why go all that way and waste all that money just for someone to tell you what you already know? That's the assumption. And they go ahead and self-medicate and take malarial drugs at home, right? But here, I trust that the system will try to get to the bottom of my symptoms. So in that way, I have become that health conscious to the point where I do not ignore symptoms anymore, right? I actually want to investigate the symptoms because I trust that the system will tell me the truth and give me the true picture of my health. So in that way, I have become more proactive with my health. There was a time when, yes, I have a headache. I'm just like, yeah, it's just a headache. Yeah, it's just a headache. And then on top of that headache, I might have some pain in a particular section of my body. Pain that is unexplained, not because I've been exerting myself physically or I've been doing anything in particular that would explain the pain, but then I would just ignore it and be like, yeah, there was a pain there yesterday. It has come again this morning. But as long as I am still fine to move around and go to work and come back, I ignore those things. Those days are gone, okay? I have a headache today, I'll take Panadol, okay, or just watch the headache and see what it does next. It comes again the following day. I notice that it is coming at the same time every day. I'm going off to see my GP. We need to talk about it. Okay? I need to know what is going on. I start feeling a pain somewhere, an unusual part of my body, and it is unexplained. I watch it for a few days and it is still there. You best believe I am going to see my GP. I am not going to ignore it. So that's how I have become more health conscious, right? And then the next thing I want to talk about is the accessibility of health information, general health. In this day and age, people, I don't think there is any perfect excuse to not be proactive with your health given the wealth of information out there. Of course, I also acknowledge that there is a lot of misinformation out there. So we just need to be careful where we are getting our advice from in relation to our health. However, what I am grateful for in relation to the internet is the fact that we now have access to other people's stories. We can see an alternative, okay, to what we have always believed. We see people living lives that we thought were impossible. I'm talking about people in their 40s, their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, even into their 90s. Maybe because I have become interested in that kind of content recently, it's like YouTube is always serving up more and more of such content of people who are in their later years enjoying an active life, an active, independent, healthy life. I am looking at 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds that are still hitting the gym like they are in their 20s. I'm looking at 55-year-olds who can drop it down better than they did in their 20s, better than some people in their 20s, people whose skin is looking refreshed and they're in their 70s looking so healthy, looking so strong. And it all comes down to simple lifestyle changes that they made for themselves. Simple lifestyle changes like eating clean, shunning processed foods, not eating a lot of this junk and crap that is so readily accessible these days, and deciding to just be more active. For some of them, they would say just 30 minutes of walking per day is all they require to remain in good health. So with the wealth of information out there, personally, I don't think there is any excuse for me to not be healthier than I am. Because I can't know all these things and then not do better. If I refuse to do better, it is all on me. So I am being more responsible with my health now, just because I can see that this is possible. It is actually possible to live disease-free. It is possible to live a life where you don't develop any chronic illnesses that would require you to be medicated, require you to be in a wheelchair. It's possible for you to still retain mobility in your joints and flexibility in your bones, growing into your old age, right? So yeah, and On that note, if you would like me to make a video of how I have been able to make a U-turn in my health, please let me know. I know that I have touched a little bit on this in several of my previous videos, okay, but I have only given you half of the story of how bad my health used to be and all the things that I have done and still doing to bring me to where I am now in my health journey. And this is me approaching 40, okay? So if you would like me to make that video, please let me know in the comments and I will make an entire video about it. I am going to close with this. If you are an immigrant in particular, of course, this video I believe is beneficial to everybody, but if you are an immigrant in particular, when you think about those plans you have around your migration, around you relocating to another country, I really hope that health is top on the list. That's what I want to close with. We should be looking after ourselves, okay? And on that note, people, I hope to see you again in another video. Please let me know in the comments if you would like me to make the other video I talked about. And I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.